Alright, what's up everyone, I'm Faloki, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about Julio Jones once again. Apparently the Seattle Seahawks are the betting odds favorites to get Julio Jones, which I don't know if I agree with that, but that gives me another excuse to talk a little bit about Julio Jones, solidify my opinions more, and then talk about some other stuff. Stop right there. Before we continue on with the video, in honor of Gay Pride Month, I would like for everyone to take a second to honor and worship Daddy DK and Father Forsyth. Thank you. Now, although the Seattle Seahawks are probably one of the teams in the NFL that needs Julio Jones the least, we are the betting favorites because we've kind of shown the most interest so far. When you look at it, you can see these betting odds. You see the Seattle Seahawks and the Titans and the Patriots. Those are kind of the teams that I think should be ahead of us. I think Titans and Patriots have gone a lot harder when it comes to they actually need him and they actually might trade for him. I don't think the Seahawks will actually trade for him. That's the thing. I think we're doing due diligence, trying to not let him get into the NFC West. I'd actually be surprised if the Seattle Seahawks offered enough to try and outbid another team. So right now, the Seattle Seahawks are apparently pretty heavy favorites. They're getting to the point where you actually wouldn't be making a ton of money if they actually traded for them, because betting the plus 150 means you put $100, you get 150 back. So honestly, those are horrible odds because anybody can trade for Julio Jones. There's no set in stone team that is most likely going to get him. So saying he's going to the Seahawks, putting $100 on it only to get 50 back, where if he doesn't go, you can lose 100. That's kind of horrible odds for the Seahawks. Now, a team like the 49ers, who have a plus 1,000, they're a team that could possibly trade for him, and then boom, you throw 100, you get 1,000 back. I don't think he's going to go to the 49ers because if he's going to the NFC West, I think the Seahawks will outbid anyone. But, I mean, there's a lot of teams here that I think would probably go after him harder than the Seahawks would. The Colts probably would. Chargers might. I mean, any team on this list would probably be going harder than the Seattle Seahawks to go and get him because the Patriots need him more. Ravens need wide receiver more. The 49ers could use him. The Packers probably need to get Aaron Rodgers happy if they want any chance of him staying. The Dolphins could get a good wide receiver. The Cowboys probably aren't going to go for him. They already have so much money tied into Amari Cooper. I mean, there's a lot of teams here that I think should have better odds than the Seahawks. I think it's just the fact that the Seahawks have shown the most interest so far. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Julio Jones is an absolutely amazing player. There is no doubt that he is better than Tyler Lockett, he's better than DK Metcalf, and he's better than anyone else on the Seahawks wide receiver roster. But the Seattle Seahawks have such a good wide receiver group that is so viable and can get them by very well that it doesn't really seem like it's very necessary to get Julio Jones. We have other spots that we could fill, trading for someone like Stephon Gilmore, maybe going after some other guys that are kind of under the radar right now, signing some players with the money that we'll probably have after some cuts. Like Julio Jones, he would be really nice to get. There's no doubt about it. Any team that's going to be getting Julio Jones is going to be getting better. But the thing is, with what you'd have to take on when it comes to cap, and you also have to trade assets to get him, what you're getting for the Seattle Seahawks to get just a bit better in the wide receiver group, I don't think is worth it. I think the Seattle Seahawks should focus their attention on other players trying to fill gaps of need like corner, offensive line, defensive tackle, because right now defensive tackle, I love Poona Ford. We'll most likely be having LJ Collier trying out to play some defensive tackle too. But honestly, I think that there are spots that we need a lot more than wide receiver, and that's most spots on the team. But one pretty important thing that I didn't touch on when I first talked about Julio Jones was making Russell Wilson happy. Now, obviously, Russell Wilson is our quarterback. He is a very talented player and he is our guy, and we would like to keep him after his next contract is over, because if we don't, we're not going to be the same team. We're going to be a much worse team because Russell Wilson is definitely one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So obviously making him happy is important, but getting Julio Jones, although it probably would make him pretty happy, I don't think he'd be too upset not getting Julio Jones. I think Russell Wilson is a pretty smart guy. I think he realizes the wide receivers he has right now are very, very good, and we've already put some effort into getting him a better offensive line. Now, it's not great, but we did get Damian Lewis, who looked really solid, and he'll be really solid for the future. We just traded for Gabe Jackson. He'll be a really nice guy for Russell Wilson. We still have Dwayne Brown. We could get better at right tackle, could get better at center, but overall, Russell Wilson has a better offensive line than he's had in a long time. And I think wide receiver-wise, we're doing absolutely fine. I feel like Russell Wilson, he wants to be able to go deep into the playoffs. He wants to have a chance to win the Super Bowl, and you're not going to have that chance if you're focusing heavily on getting better in places you're already really good at and leaving holes in your team that are in very important spots, like the corner, like the secondary, defensive tackle, offensive line. I think we could take the assets that we'd use to trade for Julio Jones, take the money that we'd save by not taking on his big contract, and focus on filling positions of need rather than then getting better at a spot where we're already very good, one of the top teams in the NFL. So I really do think that although it probably would make Russell Wilson happy to get Julio Jones, I think it'd make him more happy to fill those needs and have a better chance of getting a deep run in the playoffs, because that's ultimately what every single player wants in the NFL. And on the topic of Russell Wilson, this really doesn't partake to the whole situation with Julio Jones or anything, but the media really hates seeing Russell Wilson happy with Seattle. It's kind of funny at this point. Now, if you go to Bleacher Report on Instagram, you go to any of those big football media pages, you gotta see this, right? May 26th, Russell Wilson was very happy with Seattle's offseason moves. You know, he's happy. And then just a few days ago, NFL veterans who should seek a trade before 2021. Now you got your, okay, David Njoku makes sense. They've got a lot of guys there. He might not be there too well. Stephon Gilmore makes sense. Seems like he might get traded. Hayden Hurst, I don't know that situation. I thought they just signed him on a 4-year deal. You got Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, probably going to need to get out of there if he wants to keep a job. And then what's this? Why is this guy here? Why are you going to act like Russell Wilson? You just said he was happy, what, like 2 weeks ago? Not even 2 weeks ago. Less than a week ago, you said Russell Wilson's happy with the Seahawks offseason moves. And then yesterday, you're just like, boom, get out of there. Get out of Seattle. Why do they hate Russell Wilson being happy with the Seahawks? But the real reason why I brought up Instagram was because I saw a post that might not be realistic, but it sure is interesting. And that's this right here. This man said, I just solved the whole league. Now, there's a lot to look at here. However, the first thing that you notice, the Seahawks give up nothing but a second rounder and a third rounder, and they get Julio Jones. Meanwhile, the Packers would trade Aaron Rodgers, gain Deshaun Watson and a second-round pick from the Seahawks with the Falcons' 5th-round pick. Now, the Packers, they seem to win that trade pretty well. The Falcons, they would trade Julio Jones and a 5th-round pick, and they'd gain Aaron Rodgers. I mean, they'd still have to figure out what to do with Matty Ice. However, the Texans would trade Deshaun Watson and get Matty Ice and a 3rd-round pick. Now, how the money would work out between all these teams, that would be something outlandish to figure out, because I know Matty Ice is making a ton of money. Aaron Rodgers, I think he's making a good amount of money. Julio Jones is making a lot of money. Deshaun Watson making a lot of money. So there'd be a big financial and monetary thing to figure out when it came to this trade here. But man, does every single team in this trade win? Maybe not the Texans, but do the Texans honestly expect to win when they have to trade away Deshaun Watson when you know he's not going back to the Texans? He's not going to play a single snap for the Texans again unless something crazy changes. I think the Texans probably get the best they probably could out of this entire situation, getting a 3rd rounder and a viable quarterback to keep them somewhat as a decent team. I mean, this trade, although it's definitely unrealistic, these big 4-team trades, they always get proposed, but no one ever really does them. But this looks like an interesting one, I cannot lie. Packers getting Deshaun Watson, Seahawks getting Julio Jones, Falcons getting Aaron Rodgers, and the Texans somehow getting something of value. Absolutely wild. I don't know how this dude came up with it, but man, is this very interesting to look at. And that's going to be it for this video. There's really not too much more to talk about when it comes to Julio Jones and the Seahawks. I think it's interesting that the Seahawks are somehow the betting favorites, even though personally I think that teams should be a lot higher than the Seahawks. There are a lot of teams that I think will probably put a lot more effort into trading for him than the Seahawks. But it definitely is interesting to see nonetheless. I've said my piece. In the first video, I think I kind of laid everything, all my opinions out. It'd be nice to get Julio Jones, but do we really need him for what we'd have to give up and how much money we'd have to take on? I think we have bigger needs to fill, but that's just my opinion. I'm not going to say I'd be upset if we traded for Julio Jones. If I wake up tomorrow and the Seahawks trade for Julio Jones, I wouldn't be mad. I'd be pretty happy, but I'd also hope that we have an idea of what we're going to do to make our corner spot better. Or maybe we just run with the corners we have right now, the young, inexperienced, hope they do good, and just rely on our pass rush being as good as possible to take the pressure off of them. I mean, there's a lot of options for the Seattle Seahawks. There are a lot of potential options that would allow us to be a very good team. It's just seeing if that actually works out. The Shane Waldron offense could be really good to make us a really good team. Having some really good pass rush could be nice to make a good team for us. We have Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs still. Maybe the corners will be young, but they'll play at the top of their game, play absolutely amazing every single game somehow. I mean, we'll have to see how it all goes. I think there are definitely some moves that the Seahawks can make to fill some needs, or we could go get Julio Jones. We'll see what the Seahawks do, but let me know down below in the comments what you think about this. Should the Seattle Seahawks be the favorites to get Julio Jones? Would you bet on the Seahawks trading for Julio Jones? I sure wouldn't. I mean, it's definitely not worth it at this point. There's a lot of teams that I think would go heavier for Julio Jones, and I don't think that the Seahawks, being such high favorites, would even be worth putting $1 into. You're basically just guaranteed to lose the money. I don't think the Seahawks are going to trade for Julio Jones, but that's just my humble opinion. Like I said, let me know down below in the comments what you think. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new, and with that, I'd like to thank you for watching. Have a great day.